What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. Today I have some more super satisfying ProRevenge stories for you, so be sure to smash that like button right now to let me know that you enjoy these stories. And the first story is called Lie and Cheat on Me? Then find out you're a wanted scumbag? Enjoy prison. So this happened about 3 years ago, and I figured it would make a good revenge story. I met a guy while vacationing in California one summer. Really nice guy. And he always wanted to do something fun and different every day, from hiking, paintballing, swimming, to going out in the ocean. After the vacation ended, we kept in touch, and over the course of the next year, we decided I would move to California. I work in healthcare as a nurse, so getting a job almost anywhere isn't tough. Just as the new nurse, your hours are going to be shitty. No surprise, so after we've lived together for a few months and my hours being terrible, they go back to normal hours and we can finally spend more time together. I'm not really one to snoop around. He had a safe in the bedroom where he kept basic safe stuff, like passports, social security cards, birth certificates, etc. One day I had to produce my birth certificate and had to go into the safe while he wasn't home. I found my birth certificate easily, but next to it was a birth certificate with an entirely different name and date of birth than what his was. So I asked him about it, and he got super defensive and yelled at me for snooping. Totally out of character for him, as I've never seen him yell before. I still wanted to know what the F, and based on his reaction and the fact that I moved to a different state to be with him, I deserved to know if he was hiding anything. A few days later, he finally tells me the truth. He used to be married and had twins. This caught me off guard because normally you tell someone you're in a relationship with if you have kids. But that doesn't bother me as much as him using a different name than what his real name is. So he decides this is the time to be totally honest with me. Tells me he didn't want to pay child support or alimony because she was cheating on him, but he couldn't prove it in court, and he believed the kids weren't his. Even though he also admitted they did a paternity test and he is the father. So he simply started using his old friend's name and information that he for some reason had after they were college roommates. So many red flags are flying now. Why did he have his roommate's birth certificate and social? He never did answer that, and Googling the name never did turn anything up. Then he decided to admit he's been cheating on me ever since I moved out here, since we're being honest, and he finally could share his life with someone. What the hell? So I moved out that very night to sleep on another nurse's couch. He, however, refused to leave me alone, and eventually started to threaten me over the phone. Big mistake. You just admitted to skipping out on child support, alimony, court orders, and identity theft. I started to look up his hometown and state, one thing he didn't seem to lie about, and found public records of his divorce and tracked down his ex-wife on Facebook. After she finally responded about a week later, she confirmed from pictures it was him and was really interested in knowing where he was. Turns out, he not only skipped out on child support and alimony, but he also stole her car years ago when he left and opened several credit cards in her name before he decided to leave town and was wanted for all of that. I mildly kept in touch with him, telling him I needed to figure it all out before we could try again. About 2 months later, he was arrested and began proceedings to get him transported back to his home state. He did call me from jail for about a week, but I refused to pay for the calls. He then had his attorney contact me, and I told his attorney that if he ever contacted me again, I'd call the cops for harassment. I then started searching his name and everything through his home state's court access site, and found out he was sentenced to 6 years for the credit cards, motor vehicle theft, theft of a firearm, and several contempt of court charges. I kept in contact with the ex-wife for a bit. She was thankful they finally found him. Also, for a bit more on top, it turns out that once he gets out of prison in his home state, he'll be arrested and charged for the stuff that they uncovered and figured out in California over the past few years. Apparently, he also did a good amount of credit card fraud out there. So don't threaten to smash someone's face in for breaking up with you if you're committing identity theft and are on the run from child support. Now, before we get into the second and last story, if you guys are enjoying this content, then make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. And with that being said, let's get right into the story. No internship, no job, no degree. Guess you weren't so smart after all. Years ago when I was in college, I worked in my dad's law office to make a little extra money. I enjoyed the work and enjoyed working with my dad on the daily. He was a nice man and generous to a fault. Sometimes so generous that people would take advantage of him, but he never seemed to mind. This is a story of a time I minded though. I was getting close to graduating and moving on when a new girl, Jessica, suddenly came on the scene. She was in a paralegal program at a local community college and needed hours in a law office for a class or something. It's been a while, but the point is, getting those hours was important to her completion of her class/program. Jessica was interesting. She was in a paralegal program, but her main job at the time was working in a gentleman's club. That's where she'd met my dad while he was out enjoying the evening with some friends. She told her story, and that's how she ended up applying at his office. I don't judge for being a stripper, more power to her, and there are many fine women and men in that profession, but it's important for later in the story. I didn't think anything of it. She seemed a little standoffish, but whatever. Things quickly started to get out of hand though. She'd cop an attitude with the full-time and part-time legal assistants on staff, and act like she was the boss. She treated the fact that she was studying to be a paralegal as a license to act like she was better than them because they didn't have degrees or certificates or whatever. And she just hated me. I was in a weird in-between place where I was doing the work of a legal assistant, but I was also the boss's son, so I had a little more pull. The first time she tried to order me around, I laughed in her face. When I found out what she was doing with the other people in the office, people I had known my whole life, who were like family, I put the kibosh on that whole thing and reminded her she was there doing work study, and therefore the lowest on the very horizontal org chart. She didn't like that, and I had a bad feeling about it all. I talked with my dad about my misgivings, but Jessica was young, and my dad was a long-divorced man who was a sucker for a pretty face and a hard luck story. She had both, and he figured she couldn't be all that bad after she was talked to. That bad feeling I had didn't go away though. I knew something was up, but I couldn't prove anything. Only Jessica had a live journal. That's how long ago this was. I figured she might have posted something there. She'd told me her name, but when I went to check it out, the thing was locked down and only her friends could see her posts. Enter Tiffany. Tiffany was a dancer who worked in a club in a bigger city that was nearby, but not so close that Jessica would know the people who worked there. She loved dancing and loved meeting other girls who were in the profession. I know all this because Tiffany was me. More specifically, the live journal account I created to friend Jessica. Sure enough, she took the bait. Tiffany didn't even have any posts, but I don't think Jessica ever bothered to check. Either way, I only needed access to her account for a few minutes before I found posts bad-mouthing everyone in the office. She went on about how she was a paralegal, she wasn't yet, and knew more than everyone in that office, even the lawyer, and was smarter than everyone there. Even more interesting were her plans to invite my dad back to her club so she can manufacture an incident and basically blackmail him with the threat of a sexual harassment lawsuit for going to see her, at her invitation, at the strip club she worked at. Not the brightest bulb in the apple bushel, know what I mean? I finally had the evidence I needed. I don't think her plan had much chance of succeeding. Dear old dad might be a divorced man who enjoyed the ladies, but he was hands-off with anyone at the office. Not to mention blackmailing an attorney didn't seem like the best plan. Still, I figured it'd be best to nip this in the bud before it even takes off. So I print everything off and hand over the evidence to my dad. He's understandably furious. He took a chance on this girl that a lot of people probably wouldn't have, and she paid him back by treating his staff like garbage and plotting to blackmail him. He calls her to the office then and there. She clearly seemed nervous when she came in. I silently handed her the copies of everything I'd printed off, and she knew the game was up. I had a shit-eating grin on my face as my dad told her that her services were no longer needed, and he would be in touch with her work and school. When the gentleman's club was presented with evidence of what she was planning on doing to a client on their premises, she was told they would no longer need her services either. When the community college was informed of what she tried to do, she was told they would no longer need her as a student. Don't mess with my family. Alright guys, and that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.